what the review actually looks like. So here's the thing about the review. The review for the NIH, and this is true of most peer-reviewed funding agencies, it's always in a hotel in downtown, usually in downtown Bethesda, so it's in the Washington area, and it's typically in a basement. I don't know why, but you have no windows, and you're sitting there for 10, 12 hours a day, whatever it may be. It's a long stretch. That's why we're writing for the reviewer. And who is this mystical person I keep talking about, the reviewer? Who is this person? It's 2 to 3 people who are the experts in your field. One of them is not as expert as the others, but there are certainly 2 people who really are knowledgeable about your field. Your job is to sell them, because what they're going to do, typically a reviewer's mentality, you have your pile of grants that you're the primary or secondary reviewer on. You know that it's unlikely that more than one of them in your pile is going to get funded. So you take one that you think is the best, the most promising, and it's human nature. And again, I can't explain it. I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but it is human nature that you want one of the grants in your pile to get funded. And I think most reviewers feel that way, and you're going to go and really argue for that grant. It's just what you do as a reviewer. Make it easy for your reviewer to argue for your grant. Tell them again, what new information will your project yield? And again, very discreet language. The new information that we will learn from this research is as follows. So the difference it will make in the lives of the Native Hawaiian population is as follows. The impact for other researchers looking at Native Hawaiian health is the following. Give your reviewer that information. Allow them to take that grant and move it forward. Sell it. Sell it for the primary and secondary reviewer. And I want to give you just one example to show you what a typical abstract looks like, and then you'll understand why I'm hammering you at selling yours. Very typical abstract. I want to show you 2 versions of it. Just look at the first couple of sentences. This one began, the first sentence that the reviewers saw, conventional clinical kidney transplants in which only one donor kidney replaces the patient's 2 failed kidneys are called technically reduced renal mass transplants. In rats, these reduced renal mass transplants lead to significant injury, presumably from glomerular hyperfiltration, but in large animals and humans, this GHF by itself appears relatively innocuous. Our work proposes to test whether this is injurious in swine and humans by itself, or only when it's complicated by additional post-transplant trauma. What's this about? What's this person proposing to do? Anyone know? Organ shortage is what this is about. It's actually a very simple concept. This is the rewrite. Organ shortage continues to pose a major dilemma in kidney transplantation, despite numerous efforts intended to increase donation. Because of that, there is an urgent need for new innovative strategies designed to increase the number of successful transplants that can be performed using available kidneys. We have developed a new technique known as segmental renal transplant, in which 2 halves of a kidney are transplanted into 2 different recipients, and now we propose to test the functional ability of these segmental renal transplants in a swine model. It's a very simple concept, but you never could have guessed it from the original description. Scientific American, make it simple. Start with your problem and what you propose to do about it. And I can tell you that this is very simple, and you think, well, you know, how did it go from one iteration to the other? This happened to be written by a friend of mine who's a surgeon, and believe me, when I saw the first iteration, I had no idea what it was about. But typically, most people are more verbal, more adept at speaking than they are at writing. And so when I spoke to him, I finally understood what it was about. And as I said, he was a friend, I rewrote the thing. But have someone look at yours, someone who's a trusted friend who can really say to you, no, just don't know what it is that's exciting, that's new that you're trying to do here. And when you ask someone to review your grant, Don't just ask someone in your field, ask someone outside the field, because anyone in your field is going to know exactly what you're talking about, right? A good idea is not enough. You do have to sell it. And we look at this cartoon, Eureka, I've invented the can opener. Terrific. What's a can? A good idea is not enough. So how do we sell our idea? And I give you some excerpts just to prove the point that good, clear writing really is important. I'm not going to read these to you. I included them so that you would know that even in the summary statement that we get from our reviewers, it is not uncommon at all to see comments about the writing. And typically they're not compliments, typically they're complaints that the writing was so abstruse, so technical, so difficult to understand. So clean, easy writing. And with apologies to Sarah Palin, I did go with the lipstick on a pig. You cannot put lipstick on a pig. I think that point has been made ad infinitum during this election. So even the best writing will not substitute for a good idea. So even if you have wonderful writing, if the idea itself isn't compelling, it's not going to work, right? So good writing matters. My comments about good writing, I'm going to make just a couple of comments because this isn't a writing class. Make that proposal easy to read. And I use this little figure of Mr. Magoo to remind myself to make a point to you. Most of your reviewers, because reviewers have to be peer-reviewed scientists themselves, so by the time you're a peer reviewer, the long and short of it is you're middle-aged, okay? You're middle-aged, you wear glasses, you're looking at this computer screen, and it's difficult when it's very small font, when there's no white space. Use tables, figures, legends, use lots of headings to break up your paragraphs. Honestly, when I write a grant, I know this sounds like overkill, but because I read a lot of them, I try and write them in a way that I would find easy to read. I use almost really a heading for almost for each independent paragraph, as a courtesy to my reviewers. So keep it simple when you write this grant. Just a few last points. One idea in a paragraph, and I always make it that. Either the first sentence or the last, however you want to do it. Use active voice. Gosh, when people teach scientific writing, they tend to teach us to use the passive voice. The work that was done by Sanders et al. Oh, it's hard to read. We did the following. We did this, then we did that. We is the right word. It's important that you use the word we, because you really want to emphasize your preliminary studies. That wasn't done by some other team. It was we. To me, it always sounds a little funny to say I. As a grad student, you might say I, because you do want to distinguish what you're doing as compared to your mentor, but in general, we use the word we. And we keep, I use very short sentences when I'm writing a grant, and at the risk of sounding completely obsessed and detail-oriented, I would honestly say that I wouldn't go much over 20 words in a typical grant sentence. So it's very different from from a manuscript where our sentences are longer. But it's not true in a grant. We really want it to jump out. We want our reviewers to get it right away. Because when you review a manuscript, you're reading one at a time. When you're reviewing grants, you're reading a pile of them. Short sentences, easy to understand. No jargon, no vague language. And so to sum up, we write to inform, not to impress. That's the bottom line. And I couldn't say it better than in this cartoon by Calvin and Hobbes. I used to hate writing assignments, but now I enjoy them. I realize that the purpose of writing is to inflate weak ideas, obscure poor reasoning, and inhibit clarity. With a little practice, writing can be intimidating and impenetrable. Do you want to see my book report? The dynamics of interbeing and monological imperatives and Dick and Jane, a study in psychic, transrelational gender modes, academia, here I come. So academic writing, I think, is truly awful. I give you an example of it. I'm not going to read it. It is awful. And this is the fate of academic writing. It's not what you want for yours. So we're going to go from the abstract. I'm not going to give give you a break.